And welcome to the Argyle CISO Leadership Forum. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker for the session. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. And our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today. At any time during the event, you can visit their virtual booth from the main agenda page. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dara Meath, Senior Vice President, Chief Technology Officer at Build-A-Bear Workshop. We are so excited to have Dara with us for her keynote presentation titled Elephant in the Room, State of Technology in an Uncertain Economy. Welcome, Dara, and over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me. I know that everyone's very busy, and this is a great opportunity for us to connect, and thank you so much. As Vicki Lynn had mentioned, that we are here to deep dive into a few different subjects today. And the first one really is about the elephant in the room, right? The state of technology in an uncertain economy. So just a moment about myself so you understand. First and foremost, I am at Build-A-Bear, and if you can't notice from my screen behind me, I do have furry friends with me. From coming onto the role in January, it was one of the first things I started to do is purchase and then keep purchasing. They're very addicting and adorable. But I had the distinct opportunity while being at Build-A-Bear to not only oversee the technology from what's happening on the day-to-day operations, but also all the major projects globally and the overall infrastructure. So it's everything from privacy to digital to data, applications and hardware. So with that underneath my umbrella, and it's been under my umbrella for many years, I get an opportunity to really understand what's important to our business and what's important through the economy. Additionally, I also do a lot of speaking roles. I'm in the middle of writing a book. And then I do a lot with educating and helping develop other companies and work for a business with my children for nonprofit. So it's an exciting time as a technologist to be able to do so much and endeavor forward. So as we look at what the topic really entails, the perspective really comes from what's happening in 2022 and how far is it going with our vendor partners and what's happening in the tech industry. And so in 2022, we saw a surge of tech layoffs. And the question really came into, as I was looking at them at the beginning, why? When we started to see one company, then the second company, and then so on, in 2022, it was a major impact for the tech industry. And so as we started to see these different shifts, the real underlying tone came in from the economy, inflation, high interest rates, a lot of overhiring, and then, of course, COVID-19, which still lingers today as a result of how much it's hit all the different pressure points in a business. It comes in from tech, it comes in from supply chain, it comes in from, everything that we do is still ripple effect. And so in looking at this, it was an interesting chart that I had seen, and it really talked about how the tech companies started to lay off and what they leveraged. As I look forward into the next element and talking about that 2022, 2023, I took some breakdown points and I wanted to just share them with you about how the employees were looking, and then of course how the industries looked. These impacts have, like as I mentioned, from a COVID effect, a ripple effect. These impacts have a ripple effect into the rest of the industry, right? So as so many workers and economies are uncertain about their factors, the poor performance is really what's going to start to trend outward. And so I love this quote from Goldman Sachs: higher interest rates and tighter financial conditions are disproportionating impact of the sector because the tech companies' profits are typically expected further out in the future and therefore subject to a greater duration of risk. And so I thought that was so key and important because that is the insight that we're seeing today. The shrinking advertising and budgets obviously are becoming a part of this. And as we look at it, obviously crypto is an important part of this. Not only did we see the tech company start to collapse, but we also started to see the tech companies that became crypto companies starting to see that explosion as well. And so I wanted to make sure that you had a copy of the capture here. Retail happens to be the space that I'm in. It happens to be a very big concern in the industry. And people are asking me each day, especially as I walked into Build-A-Bear this year, what are we going to do to change this factor? What are we going to do to help overcome it for our own company? And what are we going to do for our future to ensure that we have the right resources, the right tech stack, and the right talent as we move forward? So I just put a quote here, like, how many more layoffs are we going to do to see ahead? I'm not sure. I'm sure none of you are sure as we look at this, but I do know what the impacts are starting to hit. For us, what impacts are we starting to see for our business? Well, the first is the increase of expenses. If you have any partners out there, as I do, they're starting to look at what they've had to do for their business. And as they look at that, they've changed their service, and their service models have changed, and their increases are starting to come in. I know they're playing it all very smoothly, but as a result, we're all being impacted by those different changes and effects. So the question really comes into increased expenses, right? Re-education. What are the strategies that we're going to do in order to not get to what the ultimate is here, in a potential loss of customers and potential loss of revenue? As we look ahead, it's an uncertain economy, right? So this is really the statement of the session, right? And I hope you don't mind, but through this whole deck, I put some little Build-A-Bear, little characters just to help us all feel very warm and fuzzy through a really difficult conversation. And so there are key points really to consider when you look at the elephant in the room and when it comes to the state of technology in such conditions. The top factors are automation and job displacement, cyber challenges, digital transformation, economic impacts, inequality and access, innovation and adaptability, investment and funding, and regulatory landscapes. So these are the points that I'm going to cover throughout this slide. The first one, as we talked about, is automation and job displacement, right? And as you can see, STEM is one of the biggest, focuses for schools today, where there's an ability, they're putting STEM programs into their core solution or their core systems in order to help kids today understand technology outside of just what we have, which is a phone, right? We love our phones, we love our devices, but there's so much more to do with them. Unfortunately, STEM is not really running up all the way through to the college state. And so one of the things that we're all trying to do as technology leaders is help to engage, support, and enhance. But it's really important throughout all of the aspects of a child's growth that they understand technology in the right way, and we can get in the future the right tech pool for us. As we look at this, there's a shortage, right? And there'll continue to be a shortage until we have more ability to get into that. And right now, with an economy uncertain, technology is expensive, education can be expensive around it. It's going to be a slower growth than we all hope for. In an uncertain economy, companies are more inclined to adopt automation than to reduce costs and remain competitive, right? And so while automation is important, it's also a challenge. So one of the theories I always think about, and a big question I get a lot is, do you build versus buy, right? And when do you make those decisions to build and buy? Because when you build, you are able to see what's leveraging and building up behind it, right? And you also can see, though, every challenge that hits those milestones in between it. When you go out and buy, you're then relying on someone else to bring that information back into you. And you're relying on that third party to help educate, develop, and help you to understand what your future is going to look like. I think about the same practice here when I think about the automation and the displacement. It's automate versus human practice. One of the key times to align and to help automate, and one of the key times to help that human practice develop and continue on. The whole key and everything I state throughout all of what I talk about, what we write about, and how I manage is all about communication and education. There's a point for both values, but the key is to continue to communicate and educate everyone within your business practice. And if you continue to do that, you will then find that those that are around you continue to want to grow and develop, and they stay with you. The longevity of an associate is not only based on what they're doing in their day-to-day practice, not only what you're paying them, but it's also how you're building your partnership with them and how you're helping them to build themselves. It's interpersonal and it's developmental that they're all looking for. Our next challenge is obviously cybersecurity challenges, right? We face them every day. If you're a technology leader, right, out there, if you're not a technology leader and just in business, you know that cybersecurity took an uplift during the pandemic, right? And the reason why is because a lot of people had extra time, a lot of people had extra resources, and they were all doing what they could in order to challenge the systems and take advantage of it. We spent a lot of time maintaining robust securities, and measurements to become the important piece of our business. At every conversation that we have, security is a part of it. It is, right? And we continue to hit our measures. I believe this type of field is challenged each day and will continue to be challenged. And the most that we can do with it is start to formulate and build committees, build infrastructure, build partnerships that will help us align it. In our particular company, we've built committees around our risk management, we built privacy committees, and we built security committees. Each one of those committees are made up of not just technologists, but business units as well as in some cases, our external legal teams, our internal legal teams, our human resource departments. And we talk about this globally to expand it. So we bring in those that are our European factors, our UK, our Ireland, our Canada, Mexico, and so on. And why? Is because each area has its own nuance and each area has an important voice within these chapters and subjects. So to build out this area, you must put time and effort into that. And it doesn't take overnight. We'd all love to flip the switch and say, we're secure and everything's in best practice. And every new project we have is going to be that. But it takes time and it takes talent and understanding to do so. The next was just a reference into our digital transformation. And what I did is actually just here, I presented a full 53-page digital transformation document to my board back in March, in my first 3 months of coming into the company. And we talked about what was the importance of a journey of digital transformation and what was it going to do. And so I took some of this context out of that just to give the understanding that it's an influence, it's a pace of change, and it's a new product alignment. Digital transformation in every package and every tech work is going to grow across the board. But as a result of that, when the economy conditions are accelerated, it also means that digital transformation gets accelerated because people are looking for ways to keep up and creatively align with their different circumstances. And the challenge is if you don't stay aligned with that, you are going to lose out on what you could possibly get from a return from the consumer or from the business. And so a lot of times we build out large tech stack and information against big projects. But what I do is I run an agile house. I look for small projects. I look for small wins that always build up into the ultimate goal of a big win at the end of the day. So my suggestion is you're looking at digital transformation. And again, everyone runs a different business. It's always going to be imperative that you look at what your business can offer and what you can do. But if digital transformation is your future and your way of helping to align with that economy conditions, agility is going to be a forefront of that focus. So the economic impact is obviously one of obvious, right? But not so always obvious that we talk about. The challenge is that technology has always the potential to drive efficiency and productivity and cost savings, while helping the business to obviously navigate the uncertain economic conditions. The challenge is that it can, though, leave some behind, right? It can slow down innovation by doing it. So when I look at rebalancing and I look at what we're going to go for next, I always say, what do we need that's working, but needs to step up? What do we have that's working that doesn't necessarily need to be touched today? And I can leave that kind of moving its own pace. And then what do I need to do to make a change? There's a lot of different things that we have to landscape, and economic impact is a large part of that. The next segment is really inequality and access, right? Inequality and access is a challenge. And I mentioned it earlier, right? When we got into how do we build up our associates? How do we build up our business? How do we build up our business partners, right? Because it's not just who our technologists are, it's also the business partners utilizing it. So addressing this is so crucial for us as a business to understand and where we can bring associates up into. Just within my department, I visualize and look at every role, and I ask people, what do you want to do when you move forward, right? And sometimes I say, what do you want to do when you grow up, right? Because that's a great question. And a lot of times I'll be challenging them for different roles. And when I do that, it starts to open up and starts to bring in that equality of, okay, how can we get you there? What can we do with it? And when they start to leverage into the right roles or start to make adjustments into the right roles, it empowers them and makes them feel that certainty about the business and themselves, and continues to build on their personal and professional development. When we look at innovation and adaptivity, I can tell you this is an area that gets challenged during the economic times, right? We mentioned it that if I look at my business partners and my tech companies, or even my tech of my own that we're building, when we don't have the funding, when we don't have the alignment, we are challenged to keep innovating. So we find different ways. As I mentioned, we keep agility at the forefront of our thought. We try to build in what I call a T90. It's a build in 90 days. It's transformation in 90 days. If you think of that concept at the front of what you're doing, you will continue to innovate in small perspectives. Eventually, again, small perspectives lead to bigger innovations. One small shift can add into values of future shifts when you do have the economy. But companies that embrace innovation, of course, is critical. When you walk into a house, and I've walked in plenty of traditional houses that said, no, we're good. No, we're going to keep rolling the way we are, but you can go ahead and do these other side things. They're not innovating, they're not thinking about it, and they're not moving ahead. So it's crucial that we all think about innovation in the right way, and that we help to drive that message through our entire business. And it's important that even those that think they're innovators, that you keep reminding them that that we have to keep moving forward, right? And sometimes it's just a bigger discussion. Investments and funding. Wow, this is always the biggest question that we get. And as we think about, again, the underlining and core of what the elephant in the room is, investment and funding is it, right? Where do we find the funds? How do we justify the funds? Where do we build them out? I know when we sit down with our budgets, it looks like it's very starking, and you say to yourself, well, I've got X that I have to run the business with. I've got so much that I want to put into my capital, but then I need to be able to keep innovating. I need to be able to keep developing. The way that, again, I structurally look at that is I take project by project, and I take it in small portions, but I detail it out to the degree where I say, what is my investment? And I look at my investment plan in a at once to 5-year plan, and I start to draw out what I can do with each. I ask for my capital in a way that I know that I can build out and be successful against that capital. And I look at it, and I put the precedents back onto the team members and to my business partners to understand and align. I also draw them in, as I said, to that conversation, and we build those infrastructure and investments together, so that I'm not just deciding it from a technology perspective, we're deciding it and putting that organizational piece together. When we look at venture capital, when we look at investments in startups, it has been a challenging flux as we look at it. Technology space is being built out at a rapid pace. And how do you make yourself known in front of things? And you've got to have a strong portfolio. You've got to have a strong position and understanding. And a lot of times, you've got to have people that have understood and listened and believed in that factor. When we look at the last piece here, it's really the regulatory landscape around it, because all of this is great, but again, we all have to have guidelines and rules, right? What's the biggest thing that just came out recently that everybody was so scared about? Well, that was ChatGPT, right? And so people are like, gosh, how do I get my right sense around that? How do I make sure that I'm regulating so that the company can utilize it? Well, someone like me has gone into, trying to do coach harmonious with someone like Microsoft, where we're building out these initiatives together. So I know the guardrails, I understand the regulations around it. My company understands the regulatory around it, and we can still use the performance of a solution like that without hindering capabilities, but also staying in the right prefix for the public and for our position as a business. And I highly recommend anywhere that you can get partnerships like that you do so. It's a critical piece of what the business can do to be successful. And I highly recommend that you start to talk internally about, if you're not already doing it, which I'm sure you are, right? New policies and regulations. We look at things like I'm recertifying certain pieces of our business today for Europe, for the UK, and for the US. And when I look at it, things don't match out the same way they did last year, right? The UK is now broken off pieces. And so as we look at that, it's important that I understand it from every perspective that we do, especially as we start to align into more and more automations, right? RPA, AI, those automations have to be aligned with the business, but have to have core factors against them. And so we stay in those regulations. So in summary, right, the state of technology is an uncertain economic present, for both present, challenges and opportunities. We love our opportunities, but we also appreciate all the challenges out there. These underlying factors I keep in perspective every time I think about where we are in an economic state. And when I think about how the way I address it with business, whether I'm on an advisory board or I'm sitting in my own company, what am I going to do to take the next step to make sure that we're aligned and regular for it? And then, of course, rebalancing these factors. But the key things that I always look at as I look at this: communication, education, and partnering. They are the biggest factors to all of this. The more that you all know together, the more education that you can then bring out to the rest of the company, and the more that you can do and empower the business. And so you can get to that agile effect, you can build your technology, and you can still align to those that are working with you. And education is hard at times, right? You don't have the time always, but imagine not doing it for the success of our company and moving forward. So that's what I have. I know we have quite a few questions here. So I just want to make sure that we are addressing everyone's questions, as many as I can get to. So I'm going to just start answering a few. So one of the questions that came in is, how do you handle material and human capital shortages in technology? That is a really great question. There is a shortage because of the educational piece. I've brought in, I'm going to say this, I've brought in college students for internships, and I've kept them on board as a risk to the company because, you don't know, but I've hired them full time for a company role, and I've allowed for them to develop themselves as they're continuing school and see themselves potentially through the business. So I've worked out hours with them. I've worked out roles with them. And this could be in a developer's role, an engineer's role, or a digital role. And I've done that in order to help build out my technology stacks in the right way and to help build out what I think is a long-term plan. The talent is out there. We have to find it, and we have to capture it at the point that we can and hold on to it, and know that one day they may not always be there with you, but they're doing so much to manage it. So it's not always the easiest thing, but it is one of the most important things I've done. And, I carry them forward. It's amazing. I see a talent shortage is a huge issue. Any tips on getting the right talent or handling the right skill shortage? Again, those are some of the things that I would suggest. Look for those that don't necessarily sit in the same role. For example, I've taken people out of service desks and put them into digital because they went to school for graphic design or they went to school for something. I've looked for passion over education. I've looked for those that are looking outside of the box over education. I've gone for those that are seeing the glass always half full over education. Education's important, but you can keep building their education. Day-to-day activity and education throughout the job force is much more important to me than it is for anyone to go out and say that they've had X. Now, if they're doing strings of code and those things, get them into educational programs, right? But look for talent and look for it in every little place that you can find it. right? Right now I'm bringing in someone who's on our finance team, and she's got this great, tremendous mind for what we need in technology to help us continue to build our RPA. She's got the potential, the energy, the avenue. And what we're going to do is take her through courses, right? And help to build that. Not always easy to do, but I can tell you that the return is huge. And the talent that you can bring in at every level is going to help you landscape. Don't be a company that's top heavy and doesn't recognize the bottom, because they'll have nowhere to go and they'll just leave. You need to recognize every source and develop them. What are some of the creative ways that we can overcome budgetary constraints and still be innovative? Well, some of the greatest ways is going back to your vendor partners and finding out things that they offer within their services that you just don't know about, right? It might have been 2 years since you actually had a proper sit down to talk about the additional services that they offer. So many of our business partners today offer services that we're not taking advantage of. I cannot tell you that it's so critical for you to go out and make sure that you hold them accountable, find out what they offer, and start to become aligned with them, right? Even if they're the biggest partner you have, they probably have much more even to offer, right? If they're small, find out unique ways to partner up too, right? Maybe you're doing stuff where you're trying to get into different negotiations with your vendor partners to lower off your costs. And maybe you're taking it and bringing it in-house. I can tell you, I'm a big believer of splitting the pot and bringing more development in. I am actually saving on every curve that I do by cutting off the big time spend that companies were having and actually moving it into in-house and bringing talent in at every level, right? And so if I do that, again, starting them at a traditional core source and then bringing them forward, we're actually finding that our talent is staying with us. I've had very little turnover in any of the roles that I've been a part of, in any of the companies. And I really think it's because I believe in those that work for me. I constantly meet with them. I constantly have what's happening now. I constantly challenge them. I'm always doing, hey, let's have a fun session. We have global meetings once a month where we do a big event, and I celebrate every win. But in doing that, I also challenge them with things internally. So my best suggestion is, when you're looking at budgetary things, challenge your vendors, challenge your own teams, and make sure that you're getting the most out of each buck. I've also streamlined processes. I haven't gone for every shiny object because I think I can still do the same thing in-house. And then one of the last questions, I think, because we only have a minute left, what is the best way for companies to ensure that they aren't left behind? You know, coming to sessions like this is a really good way. Understanding that we're all going through, you know, uncertainties and different landscapes. And, you know, I love in tech that we always hear the keyword, right? Every time that we walk into a year, it's always something, right? Years ago it was Omni, then it went into digital transformation and all. But understanding those words and what they're going to mean for your business, and trying to keep on top of things before your business partners do, because when they bring it to you, you want to be able to understand it. There's a ton of different references out there. I'm happy to share anything if someone wants to reach out to me, but stay engaged, stay a part of the community, and definitely join different organizations and business groups. They will help you to be aligned with the new sourcing and technologies that are out there and the ways that you can help develop your own teams. So crucial. So we're at time now. I want to thank everybody so much for spending the time with myself and my furry friends. And I wish you all the best in your success. And I'm going to send it back over to Vicki Lynn.
Thank you, Dara, for that excellent keynote. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today for this session. This session, along with all of today's content, is available on demand following the event.